everyone, welcome to Live Interactive English. This is Karen.
Hello everybody, I'm Shane.
Today we're looking at day 1 of goodbye paperbacks and hello ebooks. And the vocabulary words are device.
Device.
Passengers must turn off their electronic devices before the plane takes off.
Replace.
Replace.
We bought a new coffee maker to replace the old one in our office.
Emotional.
Emotional.
Brian showed a lot of emotional strength when his wife became seriously ill.
Involvement.
Involvement.
The police weren't able to prove Harry's involvement in the robbery.
Physical.
Physical.
I don't need a physical dictionary because I can look words up on the internet.
Books.
Books. Reading,
Books.
reading books.
Do you have a lot of books at home, like a big library of books?
Not too many books, but I have quite a few books, yes. I used to read a lot, but I haven't had that much time lately. How about you? Do you like to read?
I have books that they're just sitting in my closet now because a lot of times I like to read nonfiction. So I like learning about science and learning about things that aren't fantasy or fiction. So when the internet came, I found I can find anything on the internet.
That's true.
So now I find that you really use the internet and use digital things, but I don't read a physical paper book anymore.
That's what we're talking about today, comparing the two, e-books and also the paperback books, right?
Yeah.
So which one is better?
Do you have an ebook?
Well, I don't have an ebook, but I do have a smartphone, so I can still read stuff. Read articles and stuff on my smartphone.
And you can even read books on your smartphone or your tablet as well.
I know. One thing I really like about reading on my cell phone is that, you don't have to carry the heavy book around with you.
I think that's the big difference. I think that, especially as time goes on, having all these big books and carrying them around, I think people are just going to want to have the convenience of an ebook.
I know. Well, there are pros and cons, but we'll wait for you to, make a decision on which one you want to use.
Okay, let's read more about paperbacks versus ebooks.
Okay, enjoy.
Enjoy.
Goodbye paperbacks and hello ebooks. E-readers have become increasingly popular. Schools are beginning to use them in the classroom, and some people even think that these devices might completely replace printed books one day. In such a rapidly developing environment, experts are beginning to learn how ebooks affect our reading experiences.
Welcome to Live Interactive English. Today is day 1, reading an article called Goodbye Paperbacks and Hello Ebooks. Hello, I am Jeff, and that is a question.
That is a question. It's an interesting question. I'm Mike, and of course we don't quite know the answer to that question, which is why we're glad we have the article. But basically I think what it's asking is, in this modern world that we live in, where people download books onto their Kindles, onto their tablets, even onto their smartphones, does that mean that the old style book, the paper book that you buy in a bookstore or find in a library, are they going the way of the dinosaur? Will
we be saying goodbye
exactly
to paperbacks?
Will they be leaving us because everyone is now using an e-book, an e-reader, a tablet? So is it sort of the end of time or the end of days for the old paper book?
So let's figure that out. Now,
okay.
E-readers have become increasingly popular. That means their popularity is growing. They're becoming more and more popular, and that's very true.
Yeah, the number of books that come out in an e-format, in an electronic format, it's almost all of them these days, right? And you can get newspapers, popular books, old books, any type that you want. Schools even are beginning to use them in the classroom, and some people even think that these devices, the e-books, might completely replace printed books one day.
Yeah. That does not sound good. What does sound good? Vocabulary words. We have 2 vocabulary words in this sentence. The first word is device.
A device is basically a machine. Often it's kind of a smaller machine. So if you think of a smartphone, if you think of the thing you use to change the channel at home, or even a small machine in your kitchen, like a coffee maker or something like that, you could call any one of those a device. For example, we could say passengers must turn off their electronic devices before the plane takes off. Notice it's easier to say electronic devices. You don't have to say smartphone, iPod, MP3 player, tablet, device, electronic device.
Sounds good. Now we also have the word replace. It's a verb, okay? If something replaces another thing, it takes the place of that thing. If these devices are going to replace books, that means we're going to be using e-readers instead of printed books in the future. We'll be substituting e-readers for printed books. For example, we bought a new coffee maker to replace the old one in our office. So the new coffee maker is going to take the place of the old coffee maker.
Because the old one doesn't work anymore.
That's
why you want to replace it. Of course, in such a rapidly developing environment, such a quickly changing world that we live in, experts are beginning to learn how ebooks affect our reading experiences. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. You might think that reading a book on an ebook or reading a book on paper is the same, but actually how our brains interpret and handle that information can be surprisingly different.
Surprisingly different.
Yeah.
So let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to learn how this works.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。今天的文章标题很特别 ，Goodbye paperbacks and hello ebooks。Paperback 是指瓶装书，那 e-book 是指电子书。现在有不少人会用电子产品在网络上看书，难道这种纸本的书要被淘汰了吗？好，那文章一开始就提到说 ，e-reader 电子书阅读器呢变得越来越普及了，学校开始在课堂上使用。那有些人就认为说，这些装置有一天可能会完全取代印刷书籍。好，在这样的环境下，专家们就想要开始去了解电子书是怎么影响人们的阅读经验。那这边出现两个单字，首先 device 是指装置设备，那么单字例句里面的 electronic device 是指电子装置或是电子设备。再来看 replace 是指取代替换，它是及物动词，所以我们可以直接在 replace 的后面接受词。再来看 increasingly 这个副词表示渐渐的越来越多，那课文里面的 increasingly popular 就表示越来越普及。好，我们接着回到课文中。
Goodbye paperbacks and hello ebooks? A new study reveals an interesting difference between reading on screen and on paper. In this study, people were given a short story to read and then tested on it. Half of them read the story in paperback and the other half using e-readers. The study found that the two groups were almost equally able to recall the story's characters and setting. The groups also displayed similar levels of emotional involvement with the story. What the ebook readers had more trouble with compared to the paperback readers is remembering the proper order of the story's events.
All right, so the question of the day, how are e-readers and printed books similar, and how are they different? Well, a new study reveals an interesting difference between reading on screen and on paper. Now, because I was thinking, the words are the same.
The word's the same.
So a book's a book, right?
Story's the same. Information's the same.
But it turns out that even though all these things are the same, there is an interesting difference here. In this study, people were given a short story to read, and then they were tested on it. Now, half of them read the story in paperback.
On paper with an old style book.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the other half using e-readers. The other half of these people read the story on an e-reader, like a Kindle or an iPad.
Electronic device. The study found that the two groups were almost equally able to recall the story's characters and settings. So they could remember basically all the basic information, the characters, who's in the story, the setting, where does the story take place. that kind of thing. So they were almost equally able to. So the numbers between the two groups were just about the same. There wasn't a big difference there, which is, of course, what you would expect.
Now, the groups also displayed similar levels of emotional involvement with the story.
Okay.
So, what was the big difference?
Right, yeah.
Where we still have not found any differences.
That's true. When you read a story or watch a film or hear someone tell you a story, there will probably, hopefully, be some emotional involvement. Emotions are your feelings. So when we use emotional, we're talking about things relating to your feelings. Happy, sad, scared, joyful, that kind of thing. So when you see a story, right, you're scared for the hero, you're excited when they win, you're sad when someone dies. That's all emotional stuff. For example, Brian showed a lot of emotional strength when his wife became seriously ill. His wife was sick. He didn't cry, he wasn't sad, he was very strong, and he tried to be happy for his wife. Emotional involvement. Now, when we have involvement, it means we're sort of part of something, right?
Involvement here is the state of participating in something, a state in which your emotions, like in this case, are connected to or linked to another person or thing. For example, the police weren't able to prove Harry's involvement in the robbery. So, did Harry participate in the robbery? Was he involved in the robbery? The police don't know.
Part of the bad guys?
Was he a part of those bank robbers?
See, if it was a story and we cared about Harry and he wasn't in the robbery, we would have emotional involvement. We'd say, no, it wasn't Harry, he didn't do it. Interesting. All right, well, the ebook readers had more trouble with, compared to the paperback readers, is remembering the proper order of the story's events.
So that's the difference.
So that was the difference. They remembered the characters, the setting, they had the same emotional involvement, but what they had trouble with was remembering the proper order of the events of the story. So what happened first? What happened at the end? What happened in the middle? They couldn't really tell you the story as clearly through time as the paperback book readers.
How interesting. How bizarre.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah. Anyways, folks, with that, we're going to take a short break, but don't go away. We're going to come back soon and talk more about the differences between e-readers and paperbacks.
电子书阅读器越来越普及了，于是就有专家去研究说，在荧幕上阅读跟在纸本上阅读的差异。那在这项研究里面，大家拿到一篇短篇故事来读，然后去测验其中的内容。那其中有一半的人是看平装本故事书，另外一半是看电子阅读器。结果研究就发现，这两组人马，他们几乎都能够回想起故事角色以及背景，那他们对故事的情感投入程度也是几乎差不多的。不过啊，跟纸本书的读者比起来，电子书的读者他们要想起故事里事件发展的顺序是比较有困难的。这个结果还蛮有意思哦。那我们先来看看 setting 这个字是指小说或是戏剧的情节背景。那 emotion 是情感，我们课文里面的 emotional 是它的形容词，表示情感上的。再来看 involvement 是指投入、牵扯或是参与，所以 emotional involvement 就表示情感上的投入。好，我们接着回到课文中。
Goodbye paperbacks and hello ebooks? This result may have been caused by the physical differences between paper books and ebooks, according to researchers. When we read a book, our fingers can feel the width of the pages. This feeling may help us mentally piece together the story sequence. An e-reader cannot provide this experience.
Before the break, we were reading about a study and some research that had been conducted.
That's right. A group of people were given the same story. Half of them read it in the old paper book, half of them read it in the e-book. Equally, they could remember the characters, the setting, the plot. They had the same emotional feelings towards the story. But the big difference was in how they remembered the way the story actually played out, the way the story actually went, the time of the story, the beginning, the end, the middle, what happened when in the story. And it turned out that people with the ebooks had a lot more trouble telling you the exact progress of the story compared to the paper book readers. That was the biggest difference. Now, of course, the scientists want to know why.
Well, this result may have been caused by the physical differences between paper books and e-books, according to researchers.
The physical differences. Well, when you talk about something physical, you're talking about something kind of in the real world, things that you can touch, things that are there that can be lifted, picked it up, moved around. Physical differences between a paper book and an e-book. Well, paper books are made of paper, e-books are made of plastic and glass. You turn the pages physically on a paper book, whereas you just kind of swipe them and flick a new screen around. So those are some of the differences, I guess, right? That's the physical differences.
Yes.
The differences between how they're made and what you feel when you touch them. For example, for the word physical, I don't need a physical dictionary because I can look up words on the internet. Yeah, a lot of people don't have the actual big dictionary at home or in a library. You just go to dictionary.com or somewhere like that. A virtual dictionary on the internet, yeah.
Now here we also have the phrase according to. This phrase is the same as stated by. And yes, you would use this phrase when you're providing the source of research or evidence.
Okay. For example, when someone says, I heard a story from Bob. According to Bob, this is what he said. I'm telling you who said it. Something like that.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Now, let's keep reading. The next sentence says, when we read a book, our fingers can feel the width of the pages.
Okay.
And this feeling may help us mentally piece together the story's sequence. Interesting.
That is interesting.
Now, here with the word sequence, well, that refers to the order in which the events of the story follow one another. So in the story, events come one after another. And that's the sequence, the way they are laid out. And apparently feeling the pages helps us piece together the story's sequence. Helps us put it together, like with a puzzle.
Interesting. I can kind of see that. I know that when I read a book, if there's something I've forgotten and I want to go back, I can still kind of remember which page it was on or where I read it in a page.
Yes.
It does help you to kind of have more of a physical way of remembering the story in a book. So that kind of makes sense. Very interesting stuff. And we're going to find out more about the differences between the old paper books and the new e-readers tomorrow as we continue this article.
Well, we've got one more sentence to go before we do so.
Oh,
the last sentence
really?
of today says,
Oh,
an e-reader cannot provide this experience. It cannot provide the physical, tactile, or tangible experience you have when you're actually using a real book. You can't feel it in your hands the same way.
That's right.
Anyways, with that, folks, yes, we're all through for today, but don't go away. There's more fun coming up very soon.
刚刚说的这个研究，它结果显示啊，看电子书的人要想起故事的发展顺序是比较困难的。根据研究人员他们的说法，可能是纸本书跟电子书的实体差异所造成的。因为当我们在看纸本书的时候，你手可以感觉到书的厚度，那这种感觉就可以帮我们在心理上把故事的先后顺序拼凑起来。那电子阅读器就没办法了。我们最后来看一些单字片语。Sequence 这个字啊，它可以用来指次序或是先后顺序。而 physical 是用来形容身体的，可是它在课文里面是指实体的、有形的。Jeff 老师他所说的 tactile 还有 tangible 这两个形容词也都能表达出有形的或是能够触摸感受到的。好，另外片语 according to 加上名词就表示根据什么什么所说的，或是根据什么什么所记载的。好啦，那以上是今天的讲解，同学们别走开，马上回来哦。
Hello， 欢迎来到 Grammar Express， 我是 Yvette。电子阅读器变得越来越普及，有些人甚至认为这些装置有一天可能会完全取代印刷书籍。因此，专家们开始去了解电子书如何影响我们的阅读经验。What the e-book readers had more trouble with compared to the paperback readers is remembering the proper order of the story's events. 相较于纸本书的读者，电子书读者比较有困难的是想起故事中事件的正确发展顺序。片语 have trouble with something 是指在什么方面有困难或者是问题。文章里加入 more 表示比较困难的。have trouble 或者是 have difficulty 之后， 也可以再接动名词，表示做某件事有困难。May is having trouble with her computer, so she can't work now. May 的电脑有点问题，所以她现在没办法工作。Tony had trouble finding his way to the museum. Tony 找不到去博物馆的路。片语 compared to 是表示与什么相比，或者是相较于。Compared to the local people, he is quite shy. 相较于当地人，他相当害羞。研究人员指出，当我们阅读一本书的时候，我们的手指可以感觉到书的厚度。这种感觉可能有助于我们在心理上把故事的先后顺序拼凑起来。This feeling may help us mentally piece together the story's sequence. Piece together 是拼凑起来或者是找出真相的意思。Piece 在这里是动词 ，piece together 是及物片语动词，后面接事或者是物，表示把所有资讯或者是事实拼凑起来，以厘清真相。或者是使原本零碎的物品变完整。She is trying to piece together her childhood memories. 她正试着拼凑童年的记忆。今天介绍的用法都记起来了吗？要多练习使用哦。我们下次见，拜拜。
3, 2, 1, action.
Marty 阴错阳差地穿越时空，回到1965年，遇到年轻时的 Dr. Brown。他必须警告博士，未来将被枪杀的恶意。
Hey Doc!
Yeah.
Hey Doc! Look, there's something I haven't told you about what happened. On the night I came here...
No, hold it right there, kid. Don't tell me anything. I don't want to take any more chances of screwing up the space-time continuum.
Well, but you shouldn't...
No man should know too much about his own destiny. If I know too much about the future, I could endanger my own existence.
But you...
Besides, I've always hated fortune tellers. So, by the way, how did it go with your pop today?
Oh, terrible. My dad just doesn't want to go out with my mom.
Why?
I tried everything.
Like?
I reasoned with him. I begged him.
Okay.
I pleaded with him. I even yelled at him. The only thing I haven't tried is scaring him.
Marty 想要跟这个博士讲说未来可能会被枪杀的事情，可是他还没讲出来。那个博士说：“不要跟我讲，麦搞共。I don't want to take any more chances of screwing up the space-time continuum。我不想要再冒险，可能会搞乱整个的时空连续性哦。这个可能是要学物理的人比较懂 space-time continuum， 就是这个时间空间，你不能去回到过去改变历史，这样怎么可以呢 ？Besides, no man should know too much about his destiny, his own destiny。没有人应该要知道自己的命运哦，知道未来会发生什么事情，这样是不可以的。而且呢，如果我知道这个未来，知道太多事情的话 ，I could endanger my own existence。我可能会使我本身的这个存在都会危及到我自己本身的存在，我可能就会消失了。他用到了 endanger, E-N-D-A-N-G-E-R, endanger 就是使什么什么遭到危险，使自己的存在 existence, E-X-I-S-T-E-N-C-E, existence. I could endanger my own existence. 我可能会危及到我本身的存在，我可能就 poof 就不见了，就没有 Dr. Brown 这个人了。而且我最讨厌就是那些算命的。I've always hated fortune tellers. 讲太多了。那你今天跟你爸的这个对话怎么样呢？你有没有说服你爸约你妈呢？出去跳舞呢？然后呢 ，Marty 说不行，我什么都试过。我跟他 I tried everything. I tried reasoning with him. I begged him. I pleaded with him. 我请求他，我恳求他。然后而且我还跟他讲理，他都不愿意去，怎么办呢？我还没有试的最后一招就是吓他一下，搞不好他爸爸被他们这样一吓，就开窍，就会约他妈妈出去，这样子就不会把历史搞乱。但是他们的计划有没有可能成功或是失败呢？请继续收看英文龙卷风。